Hi, my name is John Green. You're watching Crash Course World History, and today we're going to talk about India, which is hard because A, I only have 10 minutes. Mr. Green, I don't have time for you today, me from the past. B, when we study history, we tend to study unified polities that we can label, like the Roman Empire, or China, or Beliebers. And this emphasis on unity tends to C, lead to labels that mask a lot of historical difference, like for instance Europe, which is such a weird and nebulous word that we don't even know what it means. Plus D, no offense Europe, but there are not many histories more complex than India. And E, a lot of what we know about Indian history comes from British historians who both used and embodied the phrase historical bias. All of which F makes it very unfortunate that we only have 10 minutes, but we will do our best. Okay, we're gonna make this like Voldemort's soul and split it up into 8 parts. Part 5. Buddhism. We can't establish this historically, but according to traditional biographies, our story begins in the 6th century BCE. Let's go to the thought bubble. So there was this prince, Siddhartha Gautama, whose father kept him locked away in a palace because a prophecy foretold that the family would lose the kingdom if he ever left. But as house arrests go, this was a good one. Siddhartha had great food, great entertainment, a hot cousin for a wife, etc., but he suspected that there was more to life. So he snuck out of the palace a few times. On these travels, he encountered an old man, a sick man, and finally, a corpse. Having realized the ubiquity of suffering, Siddhartha left the palace, renounced the crown, and sought out the holiest men to try to find how it could be possible that life would come to such a terrible end. Eventually, Gautama became an ascetic, fasting and meditating for days at a time, hoping to find enlightenment. And finally, after meditating for about a month under a tree, it came to him. Nirvana. No. Not that one. Yes, that one. He finally understood the meaning of life and began teaching it to people who would become his disciples. He had become the Buddha, which means teacher, and he taught the 4 noble truths, which are 1, all life is suffering. 2, the source of suffering is desire. Not just sexual desire, but all wanting of stuff and prestige. 3, to stop suffering, you must rid yourself of desire. This sounds simple enough, but if you've ever been dumped by someone, you know that it is not that easy to just stop desiring. 4. So how do you do it? By following the Eightfold Path, which, as you may suspect, is a set of 8 prescriptions on how to live that we don't have time to talk about because, oh wait, look, Thought Bubble, you put some learning in our learning so we can learn while we learn. Thanks, Thought Bubble. So as a religion, Buddhism involves a lot of meditating and moderation, and there aren't that many fun rituals, and if you're a Buddhist monk, you don't get to have power like most holy people do. You have to renounce everything, including your hair. And yes, some of them get to be kung fu monks, but only in China, where Buddhism eventually migrated and became a religion with fun rituals and all kinds of great stuff that Siddhartha Gautama probably wouldn't have even recognized. But we're not talking about fun, populist religion, we're talking about old-school, ascetic Buddhism. Sure, you might be happy and fulfilled if you follow the Eightfold Path, but from everything we've learned so far, it would appear that humans don't want to be happy and fulfilled, or else they never would have stopped foraging. But Buddhism was very attractive if you were a low-caste Hindu because there was no caste system. In theory, anyone who follows the Eightfold Path and renounces desire can be freed from suffering and achieve nirvana, maybe even in this life, instead of having to get reborn for maybe millennia and knowing that each time there is only a tiny chance that you will end up something awesome like a honey badger. By the way, totally tangential part 6. Did you know the game Chutes and Ladders has its origins in ancient India? They call it snakes and ladders. The ladders are steps forward on the path to moksha, and the snakes take you away from it. Okay, part 7, Ashoka. Remember that for most of Indian history, India was not one unified place. It was tons of different principalities and city-states and everything else. But India did experience indigenous political unity twice, first under the Mauryan dynasty in the 3rd century BCE, and then again in the Gupta dynasty from the 300s to the 500 CE, but we're not going to talk about that because it bores me. Right now we're interested in one particular leader from the Mauryan dynasty, Ashoka. Because Ashoka attempted to rule through quasi-Buddhist principles. So Ashoka was initially a warrior who ended up expanding the empire that his grandfather started. And Ashoka experienced this conversion to Buddhism after he saw his own army devastate the kingdom of Kalinga, something I bring up primarily so that I can say kingdom of Kalinga. Stan, is there any way we can write a song about that? Like, Kingdom of Kalinga. Sorry you got destroyed. So Ashoka built stupas. Stupas? Hold on.
Stupa.
Could he have said that any more pretentiously? Stupas. So Ashoka built stupas, these mound-like monuments to the Buddha, all over his kingdom to show his devotion. And he also put up pillars all throughout his empire that proclaimed his benevolent rule and said he was going to rule through something he called Dhamma, which, according to one of the pillars, went like this: proper behavior towards servants and employees, respect for mother and father, generosity to friends, companions, relations, Brahmins, and ascetics, and not killing living beings. So those are not individualistic goals like we see in Hinduism. They're relational goals like we're going to see next week when we study Confucianism. And that's one of the reasons why Ashoka's empire wasn't actually very Buddhist, because ultimately, Buddhism isn't that concerned with the order of the world. Buddhism argues that the fulfillment of the self will lead to the order of the world. In the end, Ashoka's empire didn't outlast him by much, and soon enough, Buddhism declined in India almost to the point of extinction. Crash Course is produced and directed by Stan Muller. Our script supervisor is Danica Johnson. The show is written by my high school history teacher Raoul Meyer and myself, and our graphics team is Thought Bubble. Last week's phrase of the week was right here in River City. If you want to guess at this week's phrase of the week or suggest future ones, you can do so in comments. Also in comments, please leave your questions and our team will endeavor to answer them. Thanks for watching Crash Course, and as we say in my hometown, don't forget to be awesome.